Yo guys, I hope you're all good. Duncan Shaw here. I'm currently parked up at my local trail centre. I'm about to go for a ride on my bike, but before I do, I wanted to quickly introduce to you a brand new podcast that I've just launched. It's called the Drop-In Podcast. And on the Drop-In Podcast, we are going to try and speak to some of the world's most exciting athletes and industry professionals in the mountain bike and cycling world, but also the action and adventure sports world as a whole. Basically, if someone's got an interesting story and an interesting message, I want to speak to them and I want to share it with you guys too. On the first ever episode, we are delighted to be joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Greg Williamson. For those of you who don't know, Greg is one of the world's leading downhill World Cup racers, and he just so happens to be from my hometown of Inverness in the north of Scotland. So massive thanks to Greg for getting involved. A big good luck to him in the upcoming UCI World Championships in Leogang next week. But yeah, thanks so much to you guys for tuning in, whether that be on YouTube or your chosen podcast platform. I really appreciate you guys tuning into the first ever episode. So without much further ado, please welcome to episode number 1 of the Drop-In Podcast, Mr. Greg Williamson. So welcome to the first ever episode of the Drop-In Podcast. We are joined today by a good friend of mine who just so happens to be one of the top UCI World Cup downhill racers around these days. So yeah, welcome Greg. Cheers for coming along.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yeah, cheers. I've got a bit of a confession to make. I've been thinking about this podcast for quite a few months, and whilst I only told you about it a few weeks ago, I did kind of always have you in mind as like one of the first guests.
Yeah, and it's crossed my mind too as well. Like I've definitely got questions like I want to ask like you guys and also like so many other mountain bikers. It's like it's good to chat about, and I love listening to podcasts.
Yeah, so just to give you guys a bit of a context, we're here in the foot of the Cairngorms, which is 10 miles away from where myself and Greg are from, the old city and town of Inverness. But yeah, I guess to kick things off, to give the sort of listeners a little bit of an idea of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, as you said there, I grew up in Inverness, just outside on the Bonnie Black Isle. And it's just from day one really, I've always been into kind of action sports, and my dad did a bit of jet ski racing and paragliding and all sorts of stuff. So he kind of triggered it there. My mum was super keen as well to get me into sport. Like she always took me and tried piano, drums. Like, well, no, that's not
in the sport. Piano,
starting with the
the old sport of piano.
Yeah, the old sport didn't really start that well, but she got me into absolutely everything. Yeah, that's cool. Just to see if I liked
Jackie
it.
Williamson, he's a bit of a local celebrity in the Highlands.
Absolutely, the number one quiche maker. Yeah, no, but she got me into trying skiing, snowboarding, and absolutely everything under the sun, just to see if I liked it. Yeah. And mountain biking was the only one that really stuck. So cool. She actually took me to my first race in Fort William after school. It was a after school club race.
Was that a cross country race or?
Cross country.
Cool.
And then it developed to then joining a local mountain bike club at Lurney, guy across the road. Him and his daughter actually rode quite a lot, and I joined them on weekends, and then started developing into racing the SXC cross country series, Scottish cross country series, and then built into then I just loved hanging out at like the BMX track in Inverness and doing jumps where there was people like Kenta, you might know from Inverness as well, and then Kenta Gallagher,
cross country racer come downhill,
eliminator, then into downhill, and does it all really well. And I know then of course Ronan Taylor, who I met coming into high school, who basically taught me everything about downhill. He brought like a dirt magazine into school, and I was just like, holy shit. Like,
so was Ronan and Kenta, are they a little bit older than you? Or?
The same age. We're all the same age. So yeah, it's really cool. Like, and then they introduced me to like older guys who were doing like these crazy tricks and like on the Black Isle, and they had like local jump spots and stuff that I never even knew about, and I was just like blown away. So
yeah, cool.
Jumping kind of goes hand in hand with downhill, and then it just like,
so generally trajectory was like cross country, dirt jumping, and then into downhill.
Cross country, like loved it, loved obviously going down the hill, but Yeah,
racing
up the hill.
Bit like myself, like can never quite imagine cross country racing. But I guess to give people a bit of context, like Inverness, obviously north of the north of Scotland, for the mountain bikers out there. It's kind of weird to compare Inverness to Fort William, because if you weren't into mountain biking, it'd be the other way around. But Inverness is 65 miles away from Fort William.
Yeah, and there's not much in between there, and then also south to Perth is just, it's kind of it's just the Highlands, just land.
There's always been a bit of a scene up in Inverness as well. Like, obviously I'm a trials rider, but it's pretty crazy how many sort of racers and professionals are up in Inverness, despite it being like such a...
Absolutely.
Do you think like the scene there is definitely like the reason you are where you are? Like,
yeah,
like
for sure. There must be some sort of link with that, because also, well, you look at Danny, yourself, and there's even other people that have come from skiing.
Yeah.
Even surfing, I've heard, like Thurso Way and stuff. So
I think there's potentially something to do with like not being a whole lot of other things to do.
Exactly.
So and obviously there's plenty of mountains and hills to go up. But
yeah,
that's cool. So what have you been up to in the last sort of few months in terms of the old lockdown? How have you been finding it? Have you been enjoying it? Because like I was saying earlier to you, it's like in some ways I almost feel guilty. Like I think there's been huge sort of downsides to it for ourselves, but then also in sort of a weird twisted way kind of enjoyed it. Just getting some time sort of doing nothing, being able to ride without too many commitments, and just being in one place for more than a few weeks at a time. So have you been finding training?
I've been loving it, to be honest. It's there was definitely some hard times when you're just like not having any goals or races was kind of the hardest thing, just to be like, right, I'm kind of useless now. Like, what do I do with myself?
A bit almost like or not your identity, but like your sort of drive is
exactly
not gone, but almost worse. You just don't know like when it's coming. I think like I know for myself personally, it's quite hard when it's that sort of in between time where you don't know whether it's happening or you don't know whether it's happening. For sure. It's kind of in limbo. But I suppose there's some sort of there's at least a plan now, I guess, in place for the UCI World Cup calendar, and it's kicking off in September.
End of September, October. We're going. First race is going to be World Champs. So
that's pretty nuts.
I was looking at that, and I have made the criteria for it, but whether it'll go ahead is pretty skeptical. And then also speaking to someone kind of in the know the other day, he was like, and there is a chance they could literally cancel it the week off the World Champs, which is just kind of again not good to hear. But we're going to work towards it either way, and so
it must be quite difficult to just kind of keep that motivation going. Like if you just know you're going to be starting that race on like the 31st of May or whatever, and you're in January, and like you just know, well, you can never be sure of anything in this world, but like you know as much as anything that going ahead, you just like
and whether
you have that driving force to just keep going. Whereas now it's just like it must be quite hard, because you kind of want to. Do you ramp things up, or do you just try and be like on top of your game the whole time kind of thing?
You try and be consistent for like all of it, but definitely now is like the last push for the end of the season. Like this is where we're at now, is like this is coming into the last few races, and then it's like now it's possibly going to be the start of the season, and then what if it doesn't go ahead? Then you're just waiting another winter, and it's like, what a waste of time. But
I guess you just can't think like that, and you just got to get your head down, and at least it's riding your bike and it's fun. But I guess the training, how much would you sort of consider yourself, not to say that you're not an athlete, but like I always find maybe it's coming from ourselves in terms of like as trials riders who just make videos for a living and do the odd show, like you're in a different sort of ballpark. But like,
I don't know.
How serious do you take training? Like,
I take it seriously, because it's like
you have to.
You have to, and that's like what gives you the good results, you know. So, and it kind of gives me confidence. Like the harder I train, the better prepared I am, the more confident I am. So, I don't see why you wouldn't. You know, like it's me, it's like, just why wouldn't you?
So what's like, if you maybe take lockdown out, what's a sort of like typical week?
Yeah, well, lockdown was hard because it was like at the start I was ready to go, and I was like new team. I guess that's another reason I've got like a new team this year with Commensal, and it's like I'm itching to get going. So, but lockdown, just that threw a total curveball at us because it was kind of the first time I've been really just like, well, the first time since I started racing that I spent a full summer at home pretty much.
Yeah.
I did a little trip away testing with the team, but it was the first time I've like spent like full going into summer, and crazy seeing like literally even the plants grow.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, the trails are overgrown now. What am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
And
That's
then
funny.
I'm going to have to go out and chop them down. Like, because normally I just...
You're only used to seeing them when there's
Exactly.
nothing there.
Normally I'd be in Europe or America or wherever, like racing. So it's actually been really refreshing to actually spend a summer at home and with my friends. And don't get me wrong, it's been hard at times. It's been testing because you're like, geez, like what else can I do? Or you get fed up with one another. It's like
So who are you living with and stuff? Because you live with Ross Bell from obviously a big contributor to Pink Bike and
absolutely yeah. So been friends with Ross for a couple of years now, and when I bought my first house, I was kind of just looking for like a housemate or whatever. So he was keen to move to Inverness at the time because he was working for an Inverness-based mountain bike company, and moved there, and then that went hand in hand.
So you guys been in lockdown together?
Yeah.
Hence why you're able to still churn out some pretty pro looking for photos. During lockdown, everyone's like looking at that. I guess we're a little bit like the same, like myself and Danny have been locked down with a young guy who's been working with us, Rory, and he's been helping us keep the content flowing.
That's it. It's good to have. And it's super fun to have someone to bounce ideas off.
Yeah.
You know yourself.
It's been good. So have you, during lockdown, have you mostly been riding, or have you been riding and training?
Yeah, just riding like heaps.
You've not been hitting the gym. Well, I guess the gyms have been closed, but you've got a little bit of a gym set up in your house, don't you?
Kind of. I had a bit of a gym set up, and then it was just kind of getting a bit temperamental because most of the stuff only would fit in a small space, and then you're outside doing it, and but my uncle actually has a rad spot in like a agricultural kind of shed.
Okay, cool.
So that's like beast, and and it's been good because the gyms are shut, so just go there. And then just only recently, my coach Jed like opened back up, so I'm back in there in his kind of private.
So have you got like a coach who's got you in a program and stuff?
Yeah, cool. So I've got like a strength and conditioning coach, Jed McKerney, who's based local to me, and we just I've been working with him for the last probably a year and a half now. Okay.
And is a coach something you've had like throughout your racing career and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like early on, Chris Ball, credit to him because he kind of put me on the Scottish cycling talent team. And that was like the first kind of big push and support I had. And we were training in Edinburgh Napier University, getting tested there with like all the kind of cool science stuff. And that was like big kick up the arse kind of as well, to be like, this is how you need to train. Like
how you're going to do it.
Like I was still training as a cross country rider, and they were like, you need to be a lot stronger. You need to
get those legs bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So no, that was really like the foundation of what kind of started kind of my good results coming. And then also having a great bunch of riders around me, like Rory Cunningham and Joe Connell, Fraser McGlone. They were all kind of really keen as well, and we were all helping each other out. Yeah,
it's crazy when you think like, I guess Scotland and the UK as a whole is just such a strong sort of mountain biking and downhill nation, I suppose. And obviously with Scotland having so many insane locations riding with Fort William, which is essentially like the home of British downhill, being
definitely
with us. So so going back then, what was like your sort of step into downhill racing then after that? You're talking about cross country, so like
so as I said, my mum took me to my first race in Fort William, and then it kind of developed into racing that cross country schoolboy series.
Okay.
And then I think I even did juvenile, which is like the first step in the UK. It's like juvenile, youth, junior. Then you either go
This is cross country still?
This is any, mountain bike discipline, so downhill.
Sorry, trials by here doesn't have to about any of this racing stuff.
Yeah, so then basically when you're junior, that's like your kind of graduating year.
Yeah.
And you're 17, 18, starting to learn to drive and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then that you either go into senior, expert or elite. And that's kind of like your three stages of...
Yeah, okay.
And then after that, when you're older, plus 40 master,
Yeah.
veteran,
A
whatever.
little bit off that for now.
Yeah, we won't be thinking about that for a while.
A few more years yet.
But no, so yeah, I basically was going from juvenile, and then that's when I kind of started to think about downhill.
Okay.
And then went to my first SDA at a forest.
Ah, cool. And when was it? Was it a very much like a case of as soon as you tried downhill,
yeah,
cross country's like out the window,
pretty
or
much.
was there like a transition phase where you were doing cross country and downhill?
It was pretty much already out the window because I'd been to the Fort William World Cup.
So you'd like seen
to watch, yeah.
So when was the first Fort William World Cup in, like 2003 or something?
2003. I think I missed the first one, but I was definitely there 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
And my dad took me for like my birthday with like 3 of my friends. And
cool.
Camped and like just the best time ever. Seen Martin Ashton and Chopper Field.
So why didn't you take up trials then?
Well, it's funny you say that because it was definitely on the cards. Like we all did that sort of palette, dropping off walls, like looking for all that stuff. But it just, I don't know it. Some of my friends even got Onza trials bikes and stuff like that. But
and you like do a bit of everything.
I was so keen on getting like a dirt jump bike. I think that it just kind of.
Let's face it is probably a little bit cooler downhill.
You reckon?
Than trials.
I don't know. Danny's kind of paved the way for making that look pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, maybe cooler, but I don't know if he's necessarily the coolest guy around, but so you're basically combination of loving the riding, seeing Fort William, just being like, that's what I want to do. So like, what sort of age are we at, like when we're at your first downhill race?
First downhill race is 2006, 2007. Around then, so I'm probably like 15.
And then did it sort of happen quite fast? Because I did one thing I remember you saying to me before, like you weren't like, because obviously Scotland's had some strong juniors.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the most notable one would be Rory Cunningham winning the Junior World Champs in Fort William 2007, which was massive.
Yeah, massive for Scottish downhill as well because it just made us realise it was possible.
Yeah, and Rory's a little bit older than you, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that must have been a massive, obviously, I'm sure you looked up to the likes of Steve Pete and stuff like that, but to see Rory, who's only maybe a few years older than you from Scotland, must have been
of course
huge. Because like that was like, even just thinking about that now, it's like such an insane moment to have seen him win in front of the home crowd. But you were saying before, I remember you said you weren't necessarily like, you weren't like fast off the bat kind of thing. You were a little bit of a sort of late.
No, I don't know
didn't
why.
Have the strongest like junior career.
I was super into it, but for some reason, I don't know. I was just like a bit of a late bloomer and just like didn't quite get the ball rolling quick enough. And there's people like Lewis Buchanan, Sam Flockhart who were just dominating. Like they went straight into pro teams even, and juniors just like flying. And I just kind of didn't quite have that same kind of edge that they had. Yeah. So I kept going for it, like trying, but it was just kind of my body and head kind of needed to kind of sort a few things out first. And then it was like, once I did, I felt a lot better. But
so what was there like a sort of clicking kind of moment? Yeah. In terms of like a national race or like?
Exactly. Pretty much nail on the head there. But it was like SDA, I think. I got like fastest time of the day or something like that. And it was only, I could even say like my career only started when I left juniors.
Yeah. So which is what, 18?
18, yeah. So.
And were you on a team at that point in junior?
No. I was kind of, I had help from MTB Cut. I was on the MTB Cut Orange team.
Oh, you were on the MTB Cut team.
In juniors. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
So I kind of my last junior race, sorry to skip a wee bit. My last junior race, I qualified at my first World Cup.
Okay.
At Wyndham in America.
Oh, really?
And Stu actually flew over with me, which was real cool.
Ah, that's class.
Had like a really good trip with them because they were doing the whole MTB Cut thing.
Which I guess would probably put a little bit of a description for those who are maybe getting a bit confused. The MTB Cut team was essentially started by a guy called Stu Thompson, who now runs a media company called Cut Media, but it started off as MTB Cut, and he had like a sort of grassroots, sort of semi-privateer team, I suppose, for young, was it always Scottish riders?
Yep.
Yeah, so there's likes of yourself.
There was loads
Lewis
of good.
Buchanan. I presume Rory was on it at some point.
I don't think Rory was on it, but like for sure, like
Catherine was on
highly
it. Yeah.
influenced by it. And like, yeah, they were good friends, I remember. So, or still are. But they basically came from doing that. I actually, going back a bit again, I did a Leogang training day that Stu and his dad organised.
Ah, cool.
And that was like a massive eye-opener. I actually ended up buying one of Stu's old downhill bikes as one of my first downhill bikes.
Oh, nice. What was it? An orange?
It was a Giant. And I used to ride for Giant. That was like, again, like a bit of an eye-opener. Like,
cool.
whoa, this is so cool.
It's funny. The first thing I remember of Stu was the Clan.
Yeah.
And it was on, I can't even remember what, it wasn't like a sprung. It was like it was some video that did a feature on Crawford Carrick Anderson. He was obviously like on Giant by that point, I think, but he was still part of the Clan, but it's pretty funny. So you moved so you're on MTB Cut team.
Yeah.
You got a good result at the World Cup. And then what was the sort of next step after that?
Yeah. So that was like my last year junior. And then from there, it was kind of like MTB Cup was kind of fading into Cut Media and wasn't really having the same support as it was years previous. But also I was trying to get into World Cup racing and moving into, once I knew I was going to go into elite, it was kind of, right, I need to really like get my crap together and get after it. And then, so it was a pretty solid winter training, and I last minute got a shout from Nukeproof, like a B team to not Nukeproof Train Reaction, but Irish lot. Right. Dan Sheridan and his dad that were running, and they were like good friends I raced
So it was
with.
a kind of semi-privateer with support kind of.
Yeah, they gave us a bike and gave us a bit of support at the races, but I still played for like.
Yeah, so did you just do a full World Cup season?
Full World Cup season.
As an elite senior?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
And I ended up getting like a top 20 at Fort William and Hafjell in Norway.
Okay.
And then that sprung some interest to Martin Whiteley, and he got in contact and kind of made it known that he was interested in me for the Trek team. But then it was a very much last minute thing, because at the time Aaron Gwynn kind of made a dramatic leave. I'm not sure if you remember. But
yeah. So Gwynn at that point has probably had like 2 or 3 or even more years on
really
Trek,
years,
absolutely dominating. And then, so you literally went from privateer essentially, and you jumped straight into Trek World Racing.
Yeah, which was crazy.
Must have been insane.
It was absolutely mental. It was like, it was almost like too much too soon, really, looking back. But it was like the best thing that could have happened, because it just, it's kept me in the sport this long.
So what was that? What year are we on now then? Sort of.
So that was 2013. And now,
okay.
So 8 years.
Cool. So what was it? Must have been. I always think like a young rider going into a factory team must be quite mixed feelings, because in some ways you have like all that support you've had. Must be quite validating just for someone like Trek World Racing,
for sure,
to pick you up. But then at the same time, must be quite a lot of. It must come with its pressures. It's just inevitable, isn't it? Because they've invested so much into you.
For sure.
And obviously they're going to want something back. But like, how did you? Is that something you found quite difficult, or?
No, not. I probably should have taken it more seriously than I did, but I was just like a kid in a candy store, just like had everything at my disposal. We were given everything we could ever need, and it was just like, wow, this is it. Yeah. And like we went to America like 3 times in the off season. I'd never been to America.
And it's just all covered and stuff like that. So
with like for outside of a race, you know, it was like amazing. So
you go from like living in the back of a van, like fixing your own bikes.
Yeah.
Did you have a mechanic at Nukeproof then?
Good you said that. Like basically went from no mechanic, kind of working on my own bike. Actually, that year I had a Nukeproof wheel set, and I actually like used the same wheels the whole season. Yeah, and I must have tightened the spokes like 1,000 times.
Sounds like me, to be honest.
Somehow didn't blow up.
But, I think it's pretty much known. Like, I know myself. I'm absolutely shocking at fixing bikes. I've been lucky to live with Danny and Ali for the last forever. So they're so good at fixing bikes. I kind of never needed to kind of do it. But I think you said you're a little bit the same.
Yeah,
in terms
I'm
of
a lot better than I was, but
like Sam Pilgrim fixing his bikes with Using curbs as sanders and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've definitely had some pretty shoddy repairs, but no, we at the last one we got a bit of Scottish cycling support in Norway, where I got that top 20 I was talking about.
Yeah.
And Ben Arnott actually expressed his interest to kind of help Rory and I go to Norway, and we all actually tripped out in a van,
nice.
loaded up the van in Edinburgh and just drove out to Norway, which was flipping hilarious trip, man.
I can imagine.
Some capers.
Any trip that involves a long ferry is usually pretty funny from my experience. So.
Yeah. And then the jokes were absolutely horrendous. It was great crack. So
cool. Maybe just keep them off this. So you've joined Trekboard Racing in 2013. You got yourself a mechanic, so you don't need to fix your bike anymore.
Well, actually messaged Ben that off season and was like, that was really fun having you at Norway, and then spoke to Martin about him, and he was like, oh yeah, he actually expressed some interest on the email, and before I even said, so he kind of went back to him, and then I actually almost spoiled it because Martin had someone in mind already.
Oh really?
And then he was like, okay, I'll look at this Ben guy again, and then
so some poor guy thought he was having his dream job, traveling the world with Trekboard Racing only to get patched off, but that's cool.
But then we did 2 years with Ben, and that was like so fun, and he's such a great guy as well, and that was it.
And Ben Arnott, I think, still working with Martin Whiteley to this day on different
now.
teams. Yeah, so that's cool. So how did that season go then?
That season was epic. I had some really good runs, and also some total schoolboy errors, forgetting
just
my gloves
finding
and goggles for Fort William race run.
Oh, nice. Did you ride without goggles and gloves then?
I got my goggles on, and then we left the gloves on the turbo trainer.
Oh, really?
And so I just dropped in gloveless, and I got my first top 10 as well.
Oh, really?
So that was
I think that was one of the first times, like you said, because you weren't necessarily huge in the junior scene. I think that was kind of, even though we were both from Inverness, I think that was the time where I was like, I watched that race, I think. Yeah. And were you on the hot seat for ages?
Yeah.
And then it's like, this guy's from Inverness. I was like, how do I not know
same
this guy
here.
in Inverness? It's funny.
Literally, there was so much of that, like not just yourself, but a few other mountain bikers. I was like, you're in Inverness. I don't know how. It's such a small place, but still kind of.
I think that's
there.
kind of like an indicator of how much. Well, obviously, it wouldn't have necessarily felt like that for yourself because you're living it, but that must have been quite a big moment in terms of people not knowing who you were before to knowing who you were.
Definitely,
especially people in Inverness that didn't necessarily know, that you were from there, or whatever.
Absolutely.
So that was your first big result on Trek then, because I guess that would have been one of the first races of the season as well.
Yeah,
cool.
And that kind of snowballed into even the next weekend in Val di Sol. I had probably my best run ever going. I was third at the split, I believe, and all kinds of stuff. And I was pretty much on for podium. And where Sam Hill crashed at that bottom kind of wide corner, I had a pretty much identical front wheel wash and massive crash. And I was just like, oh, great.
Really? And
so that was a bit of a, so that kind of slowed me up a bit, and then kind of got back into it again and got another few top 20s, which is great.
Yeah, cool. So that was a pretty successful season.
Good first year.
And then you did another season with Trek after that.
I did 2 other years actually. Cool. I did 2014 and then 15. That's when I had a bit of a plateau, my first kind of plateau, and that was
I guess it's inevitable, especially in dyno racing when it is just on the edge, isn't it? You kind of it's either going, well, from outside looking in, it definitely seems regardless of where you are in the sort of standings, it definitely seems to be kind of going for somebody, and then once it goes, and then once it doesn't, it's maybe pretty difficult to get back on it, and can sometimes take a season or even longer to kind of get back on it. So
so from there it was kind of a bit of an uphill push because I had a massive crash, and I don't know if you remember, in Lourdes.
I think I've seen a few crashes. I don't know whether I'm mistaking it with one in Cairns, maybe.
Yeah.
Did you crash in Cairns?
No.
Nah, maybe it's Lourdes then.
I think that was maybe Adam Brayton. Adam Brayton had a massive one there.
Nah, there was definitely a crash. Maybe I'm just getting confused with places. It was definitely you. You showed it. I'm sure you showed it to me. Remember we did a photo shoot for the Fort William World Cup in Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
And you were in your full Trek kit.
This was the Lourdes crash.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Aye, so that was like over a bridge.
Yeah.
So probably then as well, I suffered a pretty bad concussion, and that actually I didn't recognize it at the time, and that was like, having looked back now, it's like, oh, that was such a nightmare because I didn't even know I had one, but I was just getting worse and worse.
And was that in your race run?
That was from that crash, yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of the worst and best thing that could happen, because it made me realize of how serious concussions were.
Yeah.
And I actually did the whole season pretty much probably making it worse because I was still training through it. I was still...
Yeah, you just needed to give yourself time to rest and actually get over it.
For sure. So that's something that I tried to... I've actually done a video recently with Ewan Rossi from Glasgow about trying to make more awareness with concussions.
Yeah, really. It was actually interesting you say that, because it was one thing I was going to ask you about, because it's pretty topical at the moment, isn't it? Because with this sort of, it was in the last few years talking about CTE and stuff, like ex-action sport athletes, or maybe anything that's sort of consistent head trauma. So have you had quite a few concussions in...
touch wood, no, I haven't. I've only had that one, and then one last year, which I kind of was so good to kind of get on top of, because I knew what to do this time, and it was so good to have like the proper guidance. So
I guess it is just such an unknown, like I guess it still is, but I suppose it's getting better, and it seems to be all about, like, obviously you don't want to hit your head once, but it seems to be like the second and third, it almost gets like exponentially worse if you don't give yourself that time to basically recover.
Exactly. So yeah, to come into 2019 where I did it a second time, actually, I like hit it properly, like basically got straight into, like, drove home. I had Michael Vickers, a British cycling coach, kind of help me out at the time, and he went through the protocol. Yep, it's definitely a concussion. Right, let's get home. Drove home straight away, like left the World Cup that weekend. And then I missed several World Cups.
Oh, really?
And just
this was last
season,
okay, cool.
So I basically, thankfully he helped recognize it, and then got myself home, dark room, no TV, minimal phone time.
Oh, really?
Minimal, like, anything like that. It was a month and a half I did it at home.
Oh, really?
It's crazy looking back, actually, because it was just like...
It must be like, well, obviously, like, it's super serious, but at the same time, it must have been like, especially in like this modern world, to like be away from your phone or everything, just to be kind of like sitting there. It must have been like so boring.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
but probably
so
pretty
boring.
Good, to be honest. Like, absolutely. Regardless of the concussion, it's probably quite a nice thing to like
really nice,
get away from like all that crap that we just like constantly surround ourselves with these days.
Exactly. So I like was reading some psychology books even and stuff like that, and just kind of doing minimal, like no exertion of anything, and just like, just relaxing. So that turned out to be the best thing I could do, because I knew I was selected for Worlds. So I just rested up for those last two races, and then kind of worked my way into the World Champs weekend, got I think it was 14th.
Okay, that's good.
And I was like, okay, sweet, like that's good considering I've been in my bed.
Not exactly
on
like
the couch.
Good training setup.
Yeah, and then that kind of I never actually realised how fresh I was, because I hit snowshoe the weekend after and got 7th at
so that's the last World Cup. That was literally the last World Cup race that there's been. Yeah, so that's cool.
So it was like, wow, like that stuff works, and I really want to kind of make that known to everyone as well. Like, you kind of recognise it. It's annoying because the UCI actually had a concussion doctor trialing 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. And he would come to all the World Cups. And I don't know why it stopped.
And is it just like his decision's final? So if he comes and sees someone and they're like, if he says you're not racing,
I believe
there's nothing.
He would still leave the option to you.
Oh, really?
Or the team.
Which must be pretty lethal.
Which is pretty lethal.
Because I know what like folk would be like. They're just going, especially like depending on what position they're in, whether they're like needing to prove themselves for a team or to keep themselves on their current team, whatever. It must be like very tempting just to get back on it and make things worse, because I can only imagine you're not exactly very fast if you're like off the back of a concussion. Yeah. Even if you think you are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So that guy, Nick, never even didn't really hear too much about him after. Like, I guess they stopped paying him.
Yeah, and, I guess it's all money, isn't it?
Yeah, and but no. Well, what I heard most recently, did you see Loic Bruni's crash in Fort William? Mm-hmm. Like, he had that on the hip qualifying. So he had to get checked out, and I believe he had quite a complex, especially for him with his language barrier speaking English. He had quite a complex, like, had to read the alphabet backwards, and a few other things. And he said it was really tough. I remember him saying, and he also, that did rely on him racing on Sunday. Yeah. And that would have been a massive hit in his points, because it came down to that final round.
If he hadn't raced Fort William that Sunday, he wouldn't have won the overall, because I think, did he come like fifth or like, he didn't win, but he was like, he got points basically, didn't he?
Yeah, he got points, but it was a massive help towards his.
It's a fine sort of margin to sort of tread, isn't it? Because I don't know, like
sport where
it's
there's
like
money
people's
involved.
livelihood, and then but at the same time, when it comes to your head, you just like, I don't know, it's not like hurting your arm or something. It's like
no regrets.
Yeah, once that goes, it's your goose, like so.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're doing some. Did you say you did a video or like some sort of campaign to?
Yeah, well, he actually, I can't take credit for it.
Yeah.
He started it, and they actually did an interview with me a couple of months ago, and
cool.
hopefully that'll be out soon.
That's
I know
sweet.
it's part of. You'll know Adam McGuire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he was filming it as part of his uni project.
Ah, so cool. That's a pretty good topic. So definitely something interesting. I always wonder, like with because I guess the problem with these things is it's not necessarily just concussions. It's like just continuous kind of like shocks to the head. I always sometimes wonder, like with like even with trials doing like 10-foot drops to flat, like it's
crazy.
They're not big hits, but just hundreds and thousands, if not more, of just like these sort of rings of your bell. But
absolutely, some of the worst concussions you can suffer are being like rear-ended by a car. Apparently,
I just get like a bad whiplash.
A bad whiplash is just like,
and you never even so you've not really hit your head.
Yeah,
you've just like just been a massive like deceleration kind of thing.
Exactly. Crazy.
Cool. So you had a sort of mixed final season with Trek. As a result of that,
mixed final season, but then also like again that kind of reset and kick up the arse you need to kind of take it to the next level. So again, good. I must have finally just got the rest I needed from that concussion I suffered in 2015 in the off season, because I came like all guns blazing out in 2016. Yeah. Joined Cube, which was like a bit of a skeptical move. Yeah. New bike. And
I did that all sort of come about, because I remember thinking it was like, I always thought the bike looked cool, and obviously Cube are a big brand. They're German, right?
Yeah.
But still quite a random one, I suppose.
Exactly.
Coming from such a sort of household name like Trek.
Absolutely.
To go to somewhere like Cube, but it worked pretty well for you, didn't it?
Yeah, well, they still had like a massive backing and brand behind them. Yeah. So they had all the tools they needed to create a good bike. Yeah. But I still wasn't too sure. But then, given that first test I did in the winter, I was like, nah.
So did they have a bike before you joined?
Yeah.
Or like a rough?
They had a rough copy. Yeah, and we changed it 3 times, I believe, until the start of the season. But it wasn't far off. Yeah. So yeah, it was actually, I did EWS, which was like fastly becoming one of the new cool series things to try. So I did Finale Ligure, and I still hadn't sorted a team out. And it was the last race of the season. A lot of downhill racers were there, even treating it as a bit of fun. And it was cool. And I actually bumped into, through my coach at the time, Chris Kilmurray, to the Cube manager and kind of Bliss Protection, Matthias. And it kind of just rolled from there. Got my email, got chatting. And
so you signed up with them pretty quick and just started developing. Because it must have been quite different for you to go from a team like Trek, who's got that sort of like race winning proven bike off the back of like dominating for those years, which must have been like, I'm sure they still tweaked it, but it must have been pretty much like good. You just kind of join in and you just ride in like pretty direct, where you're kind of like working with Cube a bit more, I suppose.
Yeah, it was kind of good, because we kind of went hand in hand. Like I'd kind of had 2 good years with Trek, and then the last year was kind of, maybe this guy's like losing it a bit.
Yeah.
And then Cuber coming in is kind of like also a skeptical brand, kind of being like, do they have what it takes to build a good downhill bike? So
I also thought their bike looked like, even from the start, I also thought the bike looked really nice. Like,
that's good.
No, it wasn't like nothing sort of too crazy, but just like a nice.
I don't know. I had a lot of friends diss me for it.
Really, like the downhill bike, or
yeah, or just like I don't know why. Yeah,
did they change it up much from the start? Maybe I'm thinking of like the finished article. I always thought like
maybe the finished article was
looked really nice.
Yeah, no, well, the race bike, as I say, we got that pretty dialed, I think, but maybe just some of their older bikes they weren't too keen on.
Fair enough. But yeah, you kind of like, you were on that. I guess you probably went from being one of the sort of younger, lesser known riders on the Trek team.
Yeah,
beneath like who was
it was Brooke McDonald, Nico Mullally, and Laurie Greenland, and George Brannigan. Sorry.
Cool. That's quite a big team then, I suppose.
Yeah, so it was pretty sweet team. Actually.
And then you find yourself kind of on Cube with Matt Walker.
Matt Walker.
And you're pretty much like the sort of on level kind of peggings as the sort of two lead riders in that team, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had a blast. Just
you have a bit more say on like the bike and stuff like that, and you maybe would.
Yeah. Well, I was always real keen to test, and I love just like that's one of my.
Even though you're a crap mechanic.
Even though I'm a crap mechanic. I know how a good bike feels, I guess.
Well, that's good. And I guess that's valuable to a team as well, especially if they're developing a bike.
Yeah.
It's not just about results, it's about
exactly.
Like sort of.
Well, really it's just, I think, not even that, it's down to whatever a rider feels comfortable on. If they can get them comfortable, then you're golden, you know.
She had like two pretty good years.
Good years, yeah. Yeah, I've never actually really talked about that. Like kind of publicly, but the second year of Cube, it really kind of was quite tough because I'd had those good results in 2016 and we were looking at re-signing. Yeah. And it really kind of went a bit sour between me and the team manager. It was like quite a hard time. Even to just talk about it now, it's like we just got into a full kind of argument over silly stuff really, but it was pretty hard going. He was really keen for me to sign a contract at one of the World Cups, and I wasn't. Oh, just kind of just be like, oh, sign this now, kind of thing, or sign this now, or basically you're gone, right? And or you're not getting anything, or and you're going to be with us for another year, sort of thing. So it was like, I guess that's a bit of hard tactics. I guess that setup's difficult because once the sort of results start coming, which they did, they obviously want to sign you, but then they also know because you've hit big results, there's potentially other teams trying to sign you, so they kind of wanting to get you tied down, which is only natural, I suppose. Exactly. But I guess potentially like maybe looking back now,
the sort of time you want to do it.
Yeah, looking back now, it's kind of silly, but it was just like that's business, and and it definitely made me grow. It's not only like a kind of rider, but into kind of like, I guess, treating it more like a job. Like, is it almost something you kind of, would you say you have a regret about it? Like, would you rather, like... I would have loved to kind of finish it on a better note. Yeah. It wasn't so nice to just be leaving and being like... Yeah, especially if you're still racing, like having to race like... What, like, did you have more races within that season as well? Yeah. Which must be really... I also think it's kind of like Formula One in that, like, where once you like know you're leaving... Yeah, but then you still have a job to do. It must be a very weird dynamic, like with the team. Whether like, especially if there's like some sort of like, it's hard, man, and you see it happen everywhere. It's just one of those things. Yeah. So I find that with us. Have you seen the Netflix Formula One stuff? Yeah, where it's like Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo. Yeah, Ricciardo like leaves, and it's just like he has to like still. I assure you, we're treating you the same. No, you're not. It must be so hard to kind of continue to race. Absolutely. For like those, like whether it's one more race or whether it's like half a season left, to kind of just like put that sort of like tension behind you. But you can see that a lot in Formula One. And I guess there's so many parallels between downhill mountain biking and Formula One. Obviously, there's money in downhill, but it's not the same as Formula One. But it's still like the kind of the pinnacle of given sport, mountain biking with motorsport, and then. They are essentially kind of making these cars or bikes that the public don't really ride, but it's still an indication, and it's of a sort of quality of somebody's bikes, and exactly.
Just marketing essentially, I suppose. But
that's it. Yeah, it's kind of hard for some sponsors to get their head around that as well. It's like, why would we support this? But
like we still, I don't
it's
know.
amazing the way it kind of does
Trickle down.
A downhill bike can sell a trail bike. You know, it's crazy how it works, but
it makes sense, I suppose. Like if you can make a good downhill bike and still the same sort of things going into it. So
yeah, exactly.
So you had 2 years at Cube, and then you moved over to
Uno,
which is again is quite a random one.
Mm-hmm. Like it was a random one, but then I maybe didn't have to guess so much about the bike. If it was going to be, I was pretty confident I had a good bike, and there was a lot of hype around that bike. It was kind of like,
because Uno's like, for those people who don't know, it's like, it's almost like the definition of bike porn, really, isn't it? It's like
exactly
the nicest, cleanest, sleekest looking bike, almost unobtainable. Mm-hmm. Even though they do sell them, but they sell like a handful of them a year or whatever.
Yeah, there is. They were doing like 30 with some frames, really, and then 50 with others. So yeah, they're really exclusive, which was super cool to be a part of. Like I was loving that kind of exclusivity, and working with Cesar Rojo. Like he's such a big bike designer.
Does he design bike? He designs aspects of bikes, at least for other brands, essentially.
Yeah, he's worked with quite a few. I believe Mondraker was what really kicked him off, and then I think he's done stuff with Orbea and Tense.
He's just kind of one of those like genius tinker kind of types.
Yeah, he's got some really good ideas. Cool. And it's cool just to see how his brain works.
And was that bike just like beast kind of out the gate kind of thing?
Yeah, it was a beast straight away, and I had quite a lot of people going like, "Oh, it's so quiet," or "It's so smooth," and it really was. But it was also I kind of knew a bit of as I said, leaving Cube, it didn't end as well as I hoped, so it was kind of a bit of a scramble to get things set up. And one of the options was I did have some team options, but none that really tickled my fancy. Mm-hmm. And Uno was there with a kind of exception, and the exception was me running the team.
Yeah, okay.
And that was kind of something I just kind of at the time was like, yep, I can do that. Yeah. No problem.
I have to admit, I would say like when I did hear, I think I heard that you were riding, I think you probably told me yourself, or maybe heard it from someone else. They ran for me, and I was like, oh, that's cool, because it's like such a cool bike. But then it's like, oh yeah, he's like running the team. I was like, like even just the minimal stuff I've done with say like drop and roll, and just like trying to like manage a group of guys on the road and stuff, and like knowing it's a little bit harder than maybe you would think. Yeah. I was kind of like, I sometimes find it difficult to kind of manage that setup as well as then riding the show. Yeah. And we're only just riding the show, right? You're actually having to like race. I did think when you signed that, I was like, I'm like, shit, that's going to be a lot of work. Potentially a hard one to kind of balance when you're literally having to do all that work and then still get on your bike on like the Thursday or Friday. Exactly. And still be at like the top of your game. But did you find it quite difficult to kind of balance those two things, or did you find that? Yeah, definitely it had its times. It was crazy actually how fast those 2 years went. Now looking back, it's literally just so busy. Just like that, yeah. And I was like even thinking back now, it's nowhere near as clear as it was in like Cube or Cube or Trek, sorry. But it was just it was a crazy time, and it was fun. It was really stressful. It put a lot of pressure on relationships. Like I had a really good thing going from Cube with my mechanic Jesse. Yeah. And that put a lot of pressure on him going on to, and it just wasn't the same. You don't have that same backing. You don't have that kind of team. You're suddenly spending like your own money. Exactly. We didn't have a massive budget, which was the main thing. So that thing really tailed off. You realize how expensive little things are. Like crazy. It's amazing how it builds up. It's like, crazy. It's crazy. Not making any money. Like you're literally, as soon as you go on the road, what can you say? No one's getting dessert, right? Yeah. She's like, dessert? Like, nah, no one gets dessert. You have like people like Ricky Crumpton, just red wine, mussels. That's it. No ice cream. Yeah. So you did that for 2 years, basically, leading the team, managing the team. Yeah. You still had some pretty good results. Yeah, still managed to sneak in some pretty good results, mainly because I was kind of doing things exactly the way I wanted to. Yeah. But at the same time,
bit more stressed out,
Yeah.
a bit more, a bad weekend would be a really bad weekend because you're still driving home whilst looking the ferry whilst, like all
rather than
that.
just like flying back.
Exactly.
Having all your stuff taken care of.
Yeah. And then a good weekend was really good as well. So it was, plus
it's a little bit more rewarding, I suppose, than it may otherwise would be, just because you've been
really
there from the
rewarding,
bottom up, and you've done everything.
Yeah,
That's
for
cool.
sure. But no, that was a really good time. But then definitely looking forward to just signing with hopefully another team in 2019 this year, 2020, for turned out to be Commencal 100.
Yeah.
So that was like a big relief to just kind of be like, right, let's just focus on the job again.
Yeah.
Let's just get the results.
Just the racing. Yeah, you've got because how old are you now? 28?
Yep, 28.
Yeah, so you're still relatively young. Mm-hmm. I guess it's probably pretty good that you did do that in terms of like get the team manager experience. It gives you some options for the future, I suppose. But at the same time, you're just like,
for sure,
may as well just focus on racing, I suppose.
Exactly. So no, it's been like a really like refreshing kind of time. Just having seen now experiences and every kind of team, and like I feel I've got like a really good perspective of what teams are like before I even ride for them. So it's been cool.
Yeah, because I think even from like someone like myself who, whilst I'm within the mountain bike industry, we're quite sort of separated from it. But as a fan, even just looking in, especially with like Ameriperion like doing so well recently, but just generally like Commencal seem to be doing a really good job in terms of just like
they're killing it.
They're killing the results, but they're still they've still got all the sort of crack and banter. Yeah. And like they're still looking like they're having a good time with it. Whereas like sometimes teams have all the crack, they're not necessarily getting the results, and then sometimes it's just the results, but they really seem to have like managed to bring that together like across their two teams. Yeah,
it definitely seems like they've got like a real kind of like family vibe as well, which is nice for a rider, and also to have them just they have their own media team even, so they're putting out the best stuff.
Who's the guy that does all the Commencal stuff? His videos are so cool. He's quite a young guy, I think.
Yeah. Gaetan, I think, and there's a bunch of them. So sorry for not mentioning them all.
That video that was it Thomas? How'd you say his name? Thomas the Stack.
Thomas the Stack and Hugo Frickstalen.
Yeah, that video was cool. Like
Hurricane. Yeah, it was cool.
So is he basically? So Thomas is on the Commencal 100 team.
Yeah,
and then
Hugo is as well.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So it's us three, and then there's the other Commencal Muck-Off team.
Yeah, sweet.
Amory and
so between the two teams, they've got some stacked selection
coverage.
So, yeah, it's cool. But I guess similar to joining Trek, you're getting on a bike that you like not only feels good, you literally know it's like capable of winning races.
Yeah, it's like the best kind of way to go to the races because you kind of got no excuses.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sweet. What else we got? I was going to ask you about. Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about enduro, where you met the guys at Cube. What's your sort of? Is that something? Like you've done a few enduro races, haven't you?
Yeah.
Is that something you can see yourself doing more in the future, or?
Definitely. Sometimes I've thought about it. I've kind of not picked the best ones. Apparently, I've done two.
Is there certain enduro races that are good for the downhillers, basically?
Absolutely. There's really good enduro races to do. Like I did the Dunkeld Day enduro once, and that was like one of the best days I had on my bike in 2018 or something. And there's also the EWS series, Chris Ball's series was like that was really good to do. The first one I did in Finale, and then I've also done one in Spain. Can't remember the place, but apparently not the best ones to do. Although like Finale's got amazing tracks, but they don't necessarily race the best kind of tracks. So it's kind of like,
are they just because they're what? They're like super rough, or
I think they just kind of keep the good trails fresh, and then maybe do some of the main ones, or the like kind of just so the locals don't get to. But what I understand is La Tuile and some of the big mountain like Whistler, they're like the real good ones to do, but sometimes they clash with downhill races, which is
so I guess like
annoying.
The downhill guys, when you're committed to the World Cup circuit, you must end up doing certain EWS races.
Yeah,
Whilst you're trying,
sure.
and you just never get a chance to do some of the other ones. So it's like,
yeah. Well, Jack Moore, he's recently switched over to enduro completely because cool. He was kind of, my understanding is he didn't really have much of any good options in downhill. So it was
which is pretty insane.
Pretty insane considering he's such a good rider. Yeah. But it goes to show, like, sometimes you can have a bad year and it can really, like, you can sometimes just be stuck with like a bad set of cards.
That's the thing. Like, I think so many people will look at what you guys do and they're like, oh, those guys are like living it up. They only need to go to a few races a year, but it's almost tough, made difficult because there's only a few races this year. It's obviously going to be made even more difficult this year.
And there's only few spots in each team.
Yeah, you know? And the fact that it's just, again, it's similar to that sort of Formula One thing. There's not, it's not like so fixed like Formula One, like 10 teams, 2 riders, 2 racers. But to kind of literally have all your sort of like next year's destiny in the hands of like what's essentially like, I don't know, 20 minutes of racing, I suppose.
So so much goes into
probably
it.
not even actually. Well, what are you talking, like 8 races for? Depends if you crashed all or.
Yeah, exactly. Like with Jack, like it goes back into so many things. Like it could just be like I think a lot of teams is their contract year this year, which is going to be so hard to choose off a race season that's barely possibly not even going to happen. Yeah, and
you crash in World Champs and you're like, you need to go and get a job. Retire.
And then
it's really hard. Yeah. I really like definitely respect you guys for that, and like, because it must be, I don't think people appreciate like what the pressure is.
Yeah.
It's like literally everything just resting on those like 7 or 8 races in the year.
Yeah, because you get more.
Yeah,
it's like we all.
Would you guys? Yeah, is that sort of general consensus in the pros that you'd like more races?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not happening. It seems like
because it is a relatively small season schedule. Yeah,
for sure. Like that's why I think a lot of people try to do Crankworks and other ones, because it's just like, dude, we're ready to go. Like, I'd happily race every weekend if I could.
Yeah.
You know? So
because again, like, not to constantly make the parallels with Formula One, but there's like over 20 races, I think. Obviously this year everything's up in the air, but like you're looking at like 20 races at least in a season.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is like more work and more traveling, but it's less pressure essentially, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because it means you can have the sort of,
you can have a bad weekend. You know? And you can't really afford one.
Yeah. Because what is this? There are about 8 races, like in a normal season.
Pretty much.
Yeah, 8 World Cups and 1 World Champs or something.
Yeah. Cool. Or sometimes 7. And then 8th World Champs. Yeah.
Sweet. So enduro maybe for the future. It's not something you're against. I know some racers are maybe like completely against it.
Definitely at the start, it was looking pretty promising, but I don't know. It's the more I've kind of looked into it, I don't want to like sound like I'm putting them down, but like it doesn't seem like that kind of. I would prefer if enduro racing was more that kind of. I know they're trying to have like an overall series with like uphills and flats and like get the most out of mountain bike. Like it's a true test. I get that, but just a bit more fun, kind of like using the kind of more technical trails and like straight down. Not trying to go for those extra long, like kind of like up and down or like steep climbs. It's like that doesn't really do it for me. So.
Too much hard work, like
too much hard. Nah, I don't.
Which I guess leads me on quite well to my next thing I wanted to ask you was is something that, as you well know, that we've been enjoying quite a lot recently is e-bikes. Yeah. I know you've got one as well.
Yeah. We're going out later.
We're going to go out just now. I basically got Greg over here to.
He tempted me with the e-bike.
It's like, do you want to come for a big e-bike? I'll take you on a nice loop that we've been doing. Oh yeah, you need to do this podcast first. But I think it's pretty obviously you're pretty stoked on e-bikes like we are.
Oh yeah. Unreal. Yeah, no, I wasn't quite on the same level of stoke as Max Rendon and Reece Wilson though. Yeah. I did Cathro's Walk the Talk series the other day, and they were we had like a not a race kind of thing, and they were just absolutely buzzing about e-bikes, and I was like not on the same level. I love them, but like they are like loving them.
Yeah, I'm a little about that with Danny. It's like. I think it's just maybe personality because I'll just enjoy it and be like, yeah, this is rad. But he's just like,
no, this is
like
sick.
driving, like telling the old women in the shop like how good the e-bikes are, and I'm like, Danny, like your mum doesn't care like how good e-bikes are, like she doesn't like, and just like and then going on and telling people like for the first few weeks where he had one and I didn't, he was like, oh, you need to get an e-bike. I'm like, fair enough. I'm like, now I've got one. I'll have even like been on the ride with him, and he's like, e-bikes, man. They're like, I'm like, yeah, no, like, I was there. It's good.
Like, Danny, it's okay. Santa Cruz aren't listening.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one with e-bikes because I think in some ways the consumers look at them or look at the pro riders and they think that
they're just trying to
like promote their sponsors, and their sponsors are saying, oh, you got like e-bikes are a big focus for us, you got to do it, which is obviously probably does happen.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
they are
as
really
soon
fun.
as you put Red Riders on them, they are actually genuinely stoked. Like I know Danny's the same, where he was obviously asked to do a video for Santa Cruz for the Heckler e-bike they had coming out.
Yeah.
Which I guess he's essentially paid for, but that sort of stopped. Well, he's obviously still riding them, but he's literally like genuinely loving riding it, and like it's hard to really argue with. But I guess it's probably never going to go away, the sort of negativity towards e-bikes. But I think they're definitely here to stay.
Yeah. I was about to say, yeah, for sure, and they're only going to get better and better, and they bigger motors. And we definitely been struggling. Like we rode the e-bike like every day for like a month, and then decided to go out on the normal bikes, and it's like I literally thought I was like someone had filled my tires up with cement. Absolutely insane. I know, that's my only reason to kind of not get too attached to them. It's because it's just kind of.
Have you done much like gone e-bike to back to your mountain bike?
Yeah, and it's horrible, like you say. Yeah, it's just how it is. What I've tried to do more is just put my e-bike in eco and not in boost.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm more of a boost kind of guy.
I'm more of a boost.
When I put in eco, I feel like I'm back on a normal bike.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, oh, surely this thing must be like turned off, but then it's not. There's like another one.
But if you just ride
slower.
it in that for a while, then you do actually kind of get used to it. But you ain't gonna do that.
Yeah. Just boost all the time. Just means you can only go out riding for like an hour and you have to come home.
I need a spare battery like you guys.
Yeah, so we're going to go riding just now. But I guess that's pretty much a good opportunity to tie things up. Greg can come out in his e-bike.
Yeah, boy.
Same as I did promise we could go riding. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Is there what social media and stuff should folk hit you up?
Instagram. Yep, at Greg Williamson 1.
So. Did someone already take Greg Williamson?
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Greg.
How many followers do they have?
I don't even know.
Sweet. Nice one. Cheers again. Yeah. And thanks for listening, and let's go ride.
Cheers, boy.
Cheers.
Yeah.
So there you have it. That was episode number 1 of the Drop In Podcast. A massive thanks to all you guys for tuning in. A big special thanks to Greg for coming and speaking with us at our little studio. If you did enjoy this podcast and you want to hear some more, please hit subscribe on your chosen podcast platform. We'd love to hear some ratings for you. I believe it'll do a massive difference to getting it out there a little bit, especially at this initial stage. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.